Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday morning worship service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Pottstown. I'm Rev Dave Hunter, one of the fellowship's two ministers, and with me here in our remote studio is my co-minister, Reverend Carrie Muller, who's waving to us. It is good to be with you today. We gather together on Sundays not because our theological views all coincide, but because we share a promise to support one another on our spiritual journeys. Our services may be different each week, but the love and compassion we offer one another here and to the world remains the same. So whoever you are, wherever you come from, whomever you love, we're glad to have you with us today. And as always, please stay after the service for coffee and conversation. This is the time for announcements. If you have an announcement that would be of interest to those of us here, please unmute yourself and be reasonably brief. Any announcements? Can someone tell us what's going on next Sunday?
Oh, next Sunday? I was going to talk about next Saturday.
Okay, do.
Well, I'm hoping it all gets pulled off, but I'd like to just have a regular celebration bonfire next Saturday. Forget the potluck business. So I just thought it would be a nice celebration for everybody to get together. So 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock on Saturday. We're gonna
6 o'clock.
Yeah, we're going to make some changes. We're going to have the parking in a different way so that we don't endanger people when they drive in.
Yeah, it'll be dark by then, of course.
Yeah, the theme is let the healing begin.
Let the healing begin.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Okay, so that's just my announcement.
And next Sunday, what are we doing Sunday morning?
Next Sunday is Alan's Sunday, where he's gonna do a kind of discussion, I believe.
Okay. On any particular topic?
What is right with America and some of what is wrong?
Yeah,
Oh.
he was going to discuss, it's just about what we've been going through in the election and things like that.
All right, that sounds a little bit similar to what I'm doing this morning, and that's good.
Yep.
Well, I thought it had something to do with UUA and the racist question.
I think that's part of it.
Okay.
I think that's all part of the whole thing.
Okay.
I may be wrong, but I do remember him, saying it. He mentioned the election to me when he was talking.
Well, I'm planning to be here. I hope everyone else is too. Invite your friends. And now we begin our worship with the ringing of the chime.
Okay. You got it. I've got it. Okay, we've got dueling chimes too. Go ahead, Carrie.
Carrie, I didn't hear it. There. Mindful of knowledge ever exceeding our understanding, of mystery ever exceeding our imagination, and of love and compassion ever exceeding our practice. May we reverently covenant together, beginning with ourselves as we are, to share the strength of integrity and the heritage of the Spirit in humanity's unending quest for reality, justice, love, and fair, efficient, and inclusive elections. And now we will light our chalice. We light this morning a flame, a virtual flame, a flame connecting us with Unitarian Universalist past and future, connecting us with UUs here throughout the 50 states and wherever they may be. Those 50 states red or blue or confused. May the flame of this congregation, may the flame of Unitarian Universalism brighten our lives and illuminate our souls. May be visible for many miles and for many decades. And now, Carly, it's your turn. I think we'll recognize what she's about to play. you. At this time in our service, we join with many other Unitarian Universalist congregations in sharing what is in our hearts and on our minds. There is an event in your life which moves you this morning to joy or sorrow, to hope or gratitude. Please unmute yourself and share a few words with us. Carrie will then drop a stone into the bowl of water, the ripples reminding us that what affects one of us affects us all, wherever we are.
I think we should all unmute and every one of us do what I did when I heard that call yesterday morning and go, woohoo!
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 Yes.
I got an email. That was how I heard. Or a text.
Text.
I guess a text.
Got it,
Yeah, I
text.
texted a whole bunch of people.
Yeah.
I texted Kay and
Well, if
John.
I have to tell you about a concern, and it's a personal concern. If you all could keep my brother thoughts and prayers and send him good vibes and all. He's an avid bicyclist. He's been that way since he was a boy. And yesterday he was done riding with his bike club down in Westchester. Does that in a group, but he rides a couple miles to where the group meets on Saturday mornings. And he was hit by a Comcast truck who blew a stop sign.
Oh, my.
And he's got a concussion, lots of contusions, and he's got a broken pelvis now. And he's, because of the head trauma, he's at Paoli. So he's got a long and painful recovery ahead. And he's very frustrated because he's an active person. So I talked with him at 8 this morning. He's doing, well mentally. He doesn't hurt unless he moves.
Yeah.
But if you could all keep him thoughts, prayers, good vibes, healing energy, whatever, it would be much appreciated. His name's Jim McDonald.
Jim McDonald, Paoli Hospital, you say?
Yes. So thank you very much. My brother made light of it a little bit. Just 2 days earlier, they switched from Comcast to Verizon. He's wondering where the gods were in that situation.
Someone is not muted.
Oh, that's me, sorry. Okay.
All right, moving on. Let us remember to hold in our hearts the joys and sorrows of the whole company of humanity, whether they are spoken and shared or silent and solitary. May we hold these ever in our hearts. Amen. What happened? Where are we now? It is done. The election is over. We appear to have a winner, a president-elect. The United States is still a democracy. It's not quite that simple. Will the incumbent voluntarily and peaceably leave office, move out of the White House? The Constitution authorizes the legislatures of the states to determine how each electors are selected. Elections are not explicitly required. The state legislature could, in theory, directly appoint the state's electors. If responsibility to select the president falls to the nation's House of Representatives, as it would if, for example, the vote in the Electoral College were a tie, each state, regardless of population, would have one vote. Why did I want to preach on the Sunday after the election? Since I began preaching late in the last century, I've had the Sunday after the presidential election assignment twice before. In 2004, at Shenandoah Valley, I called my presentation, "Come Sing a Song with Me." 2012 at Gettysburg, I spoke on power is how you get things done. Why did I want to preach today? A sermon reflecting on an election will certainly be a political sermon. Some of us would like to keep politics separate from religion, especially this year. In the past few days, I've thought of a few alternative topics. How about the influence of Confucius and Confucianism on the development of Islam? Or perhaps the Socinian concept of hell? And maybe more timely would be the influence of indigenous spirituality on the religion of the Mayflower settlers and their children born in the New World, and vice versa. But I decided to hold these topics for other occasions. I'm sure you'll eagerly anticipate them. For Unitarian Universalists, democracy is a religious topic. Our sixth principle commits us to, quote, the use of the democratic process not only within our congregations, but also in society at large. There are, of course, many ways to structure a democratic process. There's always the danger that democracy can gradually slip into autocracy, or even suddenly be supplanted by autocracy. And while we're on the topic of our 7 UU principles, our fourth principle commits us to a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We could ask what exactly each of these 5 words mean. Free, responsible, search, truth, meaning. The First Amendment to the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, states in part that Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. We should assume, or at least we should hope, that a comparable standard applies within Unitarian Universalism. The congregations, the Unitarian Universalist Association, the UU Ministers Association, the various other UU organizations make no rules and take no actions that would restrict the freedom of speech of UUs or of anyone else. Our nation's founding document declares, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Should men be understood to mean people? Women, you know, did not gain the franchise until almost a century and a half later, after the Declaration of Independence. And that declaration makes no direct reference to slavery, but the Articles of Confederation, agreed to by Congress the following year, refer to free inhabitants, implying that there may be unfree inhabitants. The Declaration does refer to the indigenous population, the merciless Indian savages. That's how they are referred to. The assertion that we are all created equal is analogous to our UU covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. These are not empirical statements, but aspirational statements and moral premises. Does the unalienable right to life imply that abortion and capital punishment should not be permitted? Does the unalienable right to liberty imply that I don't have to wear a mask during a pandemic, or that if a church runs an adoption agency, it can deny service to same-sex couples? That issue was argued in the Supreme Court 3 days ago. And if happiness for me comes from something I smoke, is that none of the government's business? By the way, when a so-called truth is declared to be self-evident, does that perhaps really mean that we are unable to find a way to establish it, either empirically or logically? How well is democracy working these days in the United States? I saw this brief item on the New Yorker website a few days ago. Here's the headline: Queen offers to restore British rule over the United States. Here's the quote from the Queen. This 240-year experiment in self-rule began with the best of intentions, but I think we can all agree that it didn't end well. I hope we're doing better today. Back more than 50 years ago, the Supreme Court proclaimed the one person, one vote rule, establishing that in governmental bodies in which the members are elected from districts, each person's vote should have equal weight. Thus, with single-member districts, the populations of the district should be as equal as possible. This rule applies to states, counties, cities, and other political subdivisions, and it applies to the United States House of Representatives. Thus, when the results of this year's census are released, there will be a redrawing of district lines. And for the U.S. House of Representatives, there will be a reapportionment of districts among the states to keep districts as equal as possible in population, not only within each state, but also among the states. There's one legislative body to which the one person, one vote rule does not apply, and you know what it is: the United States Senate. Under the Constitution, each state has 2 senators, regardless of size. California with 39 million people, Wyoming with 579,000. Why don't we change that? Here's what the Constitution tells us in Article 5 on how we amend the Constitution. Provided that no amendment which may be made prior to the year 1808 shall in any manner affect the first and fourth clauses in the 9th section of the first article, and that no state without its consent shall be deprived of its equal suffrage in the state. If you don't know what the first clause of Article 1, Section 9 is about, look it up. Yeah, there's the Constitution. The fourth clause involves taxation. Will Wyoming ever agree to having less representation in the Senate than California? The toolbar is showing up here. I'm not sure why. We think of the United States as one nation indivisible, but that wasn't quite the idea in 1776. Representatives at the General Congress assembled declared that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. The Articles of Confederation, the Constitution, the Civil War, United Nations Charter, all moved us toward one nation indivisible, as did, of course, various other wars, the New Deal, and other developments. But the Senate remains as a reminder of our institutional origin. The one person, one vote principle is also compromised by the use of an electoral college to choose the president. This has 2 features. The states are allocated 1 elector for each member of the House of Representatives. That's reasonably consistent with the one person, one vote rule, but also 1 elector for each senator. The second compromising feature is that each state, with minor exceptions, directs all of its electors to the candidate with the highest popular vote in the state, whether the candidates receive 100% of the vote or 50.01%. I'll ignore here the problems of electors who disregard the will of the voters in state legislatures that preempt the electors. The direct popular vote of the president would be preferable, in my view at least, but that would require a constitutional amendment, which would reduce the influence of small states like Wyoming and would reduce the influence of swing states like Pennsylvania. The way to work around the difficulty of amending the Constitution is the proposed interstate compact. Under the compact, states would pledge to commit all their electors to the winner of the national popular vote. This compact would go into effect when states which collectively choose a majority of the electors sign on, and we're not there yet. Another problem is third-party candidates who receive enough votes in a state to prevent any candidate from receiving a majority. This is considered a problem, and I think it is. Possible solutions are a runoff between the top two candidates or ranked choice voting, in which voters whose candidates of choice come in last have their second choice vote counted instead. Runoffs are a bother and tend to have lower turnout than the original election. Ranked choice voting is, in my view, to be preferred. One more challenge. If the popular vote nationwide is used to determine who the president will be, then standards and procedures among the states will need to be uniform. If, for example, a state were to have a lower voting age than other states, or longer voting hours, or easier access to early voting, its resulting higher turnout would give that state more influence on the result than other states. I'm beginning to think we should go one step further and switch to a parliamentary system. Let's return for a minute to our sixth UU principle, one on democracy. We support the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. What does this leave? Does this leave out? The use of the democratic process at the levels above the local congregation. A few years back, the Unitarian Universalist Association moved from a structure with quite a few districts to a structure with a small number, 5, of very large regions. We here in Pottstown have been part of the Joseph Priestley District, which consisted of Northern Virginia, DC, Maryland, Delaware, Southern New Jersey, and Eastern Pennsylvania. We are now part of the Central East region, which consists of JPD and 2 other former districts. In the past, each district would elect a member of the Board of Trustees. Now the board has been reduced in size and all trustees are elected nationally. The list of the trustees on the UUA website doesn't even tell us where each of them is from. Under the old regime, the district executive was co-employed by the UUA and the district. Other district staff were hired at the district level. District policy was set by an elected district board. Regions do not have their own boards, but are supervised by headquarters staff. The result is presumably greater efficiency, but also less local control, less democracy. While I was very much involved for a number of years under the old system, my involvement is minimal under the new system. So I am not in a position to compare the two. Now, Carly, it's your turn again. You will probably recognize this tune, Finlandia, which is twice in our hymnal. And here are the words by Lloyd Stone in hymn 159 in our hymnal. This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and mine. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for our land, for their land, and for mine. Amen. In the media of late, there's been a lot of discussion about how we elect the president and about this particular elections. And I've picked out one column to share with you. This is by David Brooks from the New York Times just 2 days ago, but before the result was declared, not when it was pretty clear which direction it was going. And this column prompted over 1,000 comments on the New York Times website. And I will read, I have not read all the comments, read very few, but I picked out 3 of them to share with you after I read the column. Yep, I wanted a grand rebuke too. I wanted Trump demolished by 10 points. But elections are educational events. Voters are not always wise, but they're usually comprehensible. They know more about their own lives than we in our information bubbles do. They almost always tell us something important. The first thing we heard from most Americans, since Joe Biden's popular vote victory seems all but certain, is that Donald Trump is unacceptable. We live in a divided, dug-in nation, but millions more white evangelicals voted Democratic in 2020 than in 2016. Many people voted against partisan predilections to remove a man who is a unique menace to the foundations of this country. That is no meager accomplishment. The second thing voters told us this: separate church and state. Separate church and state. We've long had political polarization in this country, and we still will. But over the last few years, polarization has transmogrified into something worse, a religious war. Trumpism and wokeism are not equivalent phenomena, but they both serve as secular religions for their disciples. They offer a binary logic of good and evil, a cult-like membership experience. Apocalyptic or utopian visions, witch trials for the excommunication of the unpure, and the sense of personal meaning that comes while fighting a holy war. In different ways, voters told the two parties that they'd like our politics to be about practical issues. If you want a religious war, go have it somewhere else. They told Republicans, for example, that you will be much stronger without the MAGA, that's Make America Great Again, the MAGA craziness. The Republican Party had a much better election than Trump. While Trump is losing, Republicans have picked up 6 House seats so far. The Democrats have yet to flip a single state legislature, meaning Republicans will draw the district lines for the next 10 years of electioneering. The image of a possible future GOP emerged, a multiracial working class party. Republicans made surprising gains among Latinos, African Americans, and Muslims. Trump won the largest share of the non-white vote of any Republican candidate in 60 years. That wasn't done by Trumpian race baiting, but because of the party's reputation for championing personal agency and personal responsibility, and for boosting small businesses and economic growth. That can be built on. Meanwhile, voters told Democrats that they too would benefit if they played up policy and played down cultural concerns of their Portlandia graduate school defund the police wing. If there was ever going to be a Democratic blowout election, this was it, against an immoral candidate with a criminally incompetent record. But the Democrats failed to pull it off. It's not policies that cost Democrats. The core Biden policies are astonishingly popular. It's that they're built on a cultural blue wall that keeps the other half of the country out, no matter the circumstance. They've done it by telling a certain sort of story. American politics, progressives commonly say, is all about the historical shift from homogeneity to diversity. They see America as divided between those enlightened cosmopolitans, that's Democrats, who welcome the coming diverse post-industrial world, and those knuckle-dragging racist oligarchs, those are Republicans, who do not. The first problem with this narrative is that it is perpetually surprised by events. Election after election, the emerging Democratic majority fails to emerge. The second problem is that it oversimplifies the different processes going on in America. Somehow we have to have the racial reckoning, which is essential, while we understand the other mega narratives people feel are driving their lives. Third, it's just astonishingly smug, self-congratulatory, and off-put. The voters have handed us a political system that will be led probably by Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, and Mitch McConnell. These are not culture warriors. They are politicians and legislators. We now have two parties whose best version of themselves is as working class parties. Maybe the next few years can be a partisan competition over who is best for Americans without college degrees. Would divided government devolve into more gridlock? Maybe. McConnell will do whatever is in the GOP's best interests in 2022. But I'm not so sure. America is bitterly divided on cultural matters, but is getting less divided over economic policy. Populism has weakened the GOP's anti-government wing and opened senators like Marco Rubio, Josh Hawley, and Tom Cotton, and others to ideas that call for more federal involvement in industry. For some, that includes worker training. For others, an infrastructure bank, wage subsidies, or research and development industrial policy. The voters reminded us again that the other side is not going away. We have to dispense with the fantasy that after the next miracle election, our side will suddenly get everything it wants. We have to live with one another. The key is loosening the grip the culture war has had on our politics and governments. Let's fight our moral differences with books, sermons, movies, and marches, not with political coercion. And here are three of the hundreds, probably thousands of comments on this. I agree that some on the left can be sanctimonious, and in so doing will alienate many people. But one important reason President Trump is popular is because he gives his supporters permission to indulge their worst instincts: greed, tribalism, xenophobia, binary thinking, and simple solutions to complex problems, and so much more. This has been true about authoritarians throughout history. Here's another comment. Excessive wokeness is yet another reaction to the dumpster fire that is Mr. Trump's presidency. To our great peril and echoing failing empires of the past, too many people in our country prefer an authoritarian ruler and magical thinking over the messiness of democracy, facts, and truth. That's what so many voters are telling us. Here's the third comment. Yes, Mr. Brooks, elections tell us things. This election tells me that much of rural, mostly white America feels afraid of a future different from the past. What it says to me is that a majority of older white men see their power in decline. This election says it is getting harder for Republicans to compete fairly in the political arena. So they choose to lie, ignore cultural norms and mores, and obstruct anything in the Senate that might benefit Democrats. They will go to whatever lengths necessary to disenfranchise Democrats, including undermining the census, unfair voting laws, gerrymandering, by claiming the election is fraudulent. I value your opinion pieces and appreciate your socially moderate stance. However, I think you have missed the mark here. What this election tells us is the GOP was successful at fear-mongering and getting out the vote of people who won't admit they vote for an immoral bigot. And now, on to something completely different. This I got from the Mainline website, a brief commentary by Ellen Youngdahl. At a time where the temptation is to hate, I think for our own sakes, we must cling to compassion. To hate makes me no better than Trump or his cohorts. The fear that is rife over the thought of another 4 years of tyranny is so powerful that it has overwhelmed some people I know. But recognizing it, and facing it, and moving toward empathy and compassion are the only way I know to traverse the dark night of the soul without being completely depleted. Now, Carly, one final hymn, please. Thank you. Our service is just about done. After the benediction, please get yourself a cup of coffee and return for coffee hour discussion. And I hope you'll join us again next Sunday, same time, same place. And if you know these words, please say them with me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of wisdom, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and in our hands until we are together again. And we conclude with the words of the Reverend Aaron Pazin. When the last campaign ad has aired, when polling stations are closed and the count has been certified, when pundits and politicians have turned in for the night, pollsters and political operatives are turning their thoughts to the next big race, the work of citizenship remains. To care more for the marginalized than for profit margins. Be mindful that quality education is far less expensive than mass incarceration. To insist that military intervention is a last resort, not the preemptive prerogative of the powerful. In short, to know that our true wealth is the welfare of all beings and the planet that we call home. Amen. Now, get your coffee.